Hello, I'm Mr Biffo, aka Paul Rose, and you are watching RetroUnlim.
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
2, 1, 0.
I didn't know you do that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Play Expo Blackpool 2018. I see everybody's awake. My name's Dan Wood.
I'm Ravi, Abbott.
And we are from the UK's biggest weekly retro gaming podcast, The Retro Hour. Now, if you haven't heard our show before, and the way it works is generally in two parts. We first start by covering the week's retro gaming news headlines, which there is quite a lot of news every week. The retro scene is so big at the moment. And then, in the second half of our show, we have an interview with a veteran of the industry. And this weekend, we're going to be doing the talk stage here at Play Expo, and we've kind of invited some of our favourite guests that we've had on our podcast over the last 2 years. Now, I'm sure there are, looking around the room, there are several faces who may remember the days before the internet, when it was all about magazines, and also Teletext, which is why today we're joined by the man who did the biggest Teletext gaming magazine. Please give a warm welcome to Paul Rose, Mr Biffo.
Hello.
Now this is a very big year for Teletext and for Digitiser. It's the 25th anniversary of Digitiser.
It is, although we haven't been running kind of concurrently for 25 years, and we're no longer on Teletext. But it felt like, well, we can't really ignore the fact that, I'm really, really old now.
It must blow your mind that we're still here talking about it 25 years on.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it particularly as Teletext, it was such a disposable medium that, it's that people have archived some of the pages now, but, a lot of it was just gone. And I always had this theory that Digitiser was never as good as people actually remembered. And it was a case of their memories being slightly more kind of positive than the reality. But actually, reading some of it back now, I mean, it's terrible. I do laugh at my own jokes, So I kind of look at the stuff that they say, like, it's really funny. I'm great.
Yeah, so we've got everybody here today, and you kind of find it amazing that people are still focused on it and going for it?
I think, aside from the fact that it was my job, most people, I guess, they rock up for work and then don't expect that sort of 25 years later they'll be sat in front of a room full of people talking about their job. And it was just a job. It was a job that changed my life in lots of ways, and it really meant a lot to me.
You were kind of running it yourself at one point, weren't you?
Yeah, it was pretty much me. For the first 4 years it was me and a guy called Tim Moore. And then, turn your phone off, Slopes. Shocking. And then Tim got fired because he upset Dave Perry. And then that's a true story if you don't know it. Then it was me for the last sort of 6 years of his life on my own at home.
Well, let's get back to right at the beginning of it. How did you first get the job at Teletext, and what were you hired to do?
The graphics. I worked for Laptops Racing, and if you've ever been in a betting shop, they have these screens up which have kind of, not betting statistics obviously, but occasionally they'd have a horse running along the screens or something like that. So I did that, and then I went to work for Wembley Stadium as a graphic designer, doing the kind of big goal animations there, and occasionally entertaining myself by. There wasn't a lot to do. How many events are there at Wembley, and how many times can you redo the goal animations? But we did have a camera, a Digitiser camera, in fact, and I used to entertain myself by sticking my face under it, because you couldn't lift it off his thing, and then putting my face up on the Wembley scoreboard, which I sadly don't have a photograph of. And then someone that I work with at Labbooks rang me one day and said, I'm now working at Teletext, and they need a graphics person. So that was it. That's I had no journalistic experience whatsoever.
Well, how did that turn into Digitiser then, a kind of online magazine that you could access straight away?
They were doing a teenage section which had one page of game reviews, which Oracle Teletext predecessor had. And I happened to say to the guy, Tim Moore, who became Mr Hares, that they should turn it into a full magazine. And he wasn't particularly interested in that, so I thought, oh no, but this would be really good. So I wrote up a memo saying, oh look, the games industry is getting bigger and bigger, oh, Sonic 2 is coming out and it's huge and blah blah, and I gave it to the editor and he said, oh yeah, this actually is a really good idea, right, you can write the thing with Tim. He was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was completely out of the blue, and I didn't know what I was doing. Barely string two words together.
What was Tim's background? Did he kind of help you journalistically and learn the writing style?
Yeah, at first I just copied Tim. I mean, he used to write for, I think he had a column in Melody Maker or something, which was called Don't Open That Door, It's TSP More. And he, I don't know what he wrote about. But yeah, he had a column in that, and he'd written for, I don't know, various sort of teenage magazines like Just 17, stuff like that. So yeah, so he knew what he was doing. Also, plus he had a degree. I didn't. So yeah.
So it was completely no background in German.
Doesn't it? Sorry. I get distracted easily. Oh no.
There was no background in journalism at all. Then it was just straight.
I mean, I did. I suppose at school I used to like writing stories, and I wrote a series of stupid kind of plays and comedy shows at school. So that was about the only writing that I've ever done. And I used to input the betting statistics at Ladbrokes when I worked there. But no, I my experience was reading video games magazines. That was it.
What kind of hardware were you working on when you're making Digitiser?
I don't know, some sort of PC, I think it was. I honestly don't know whether it was a dedicated system or whether it was just a PC. We had one of those big floppy disk drives, not the little plasticky ones, the big proper floppy ones, when they were floppy.
Well, it looked like a BBC Micro or something you used to use at school.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think it was a PC. I can't remember. It's so long ago now. When I went to work from home, I had to load up some software called WinSprite, which that was on a PC, but the ones we used at Teletext, yeah, I don't know what they were.
Were you much of a gamer yourself then?
Yeah, I mean, I had been kind of all through my sort of teens, and then I sort of stopped a bit for a few years, at the point at which I pitched Digitiser to the Teletext bosses. I wasn't playing games as much as I had done kind of in years previously. I mean, not for any particular reason. I mean, I had a job and a kid and didn't have time to sort of play games, but yeah, I still loved them, and I still read games magazines even when I wasn't really playing games. There was something sort of about
you're still involved in the culture and kind of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, back then it's not like it is now, where you kind of go online and chat with people about games, and it was, the culture was sort of very much at arm's length, and it was magazines and magazine letters pages, and I suppose you occasionally got a games fair where, but it wasn't like an event like this.
Well, one thing everybody remembers Digitiser for is the characters. Obviously, Fat Sow, Insincere Dave. Where did the idea of having characters come from?
You see, I've just realised it's like tennis, because I get asked one question by you, and it's like, I know when I've finished talking now, so I'll just turn to my other side.
We'll play pong with you.
Yeah, I'm not dizzy. Yeah, where did it go? I don't know. It started, I think the first character we had was the man with the long chin, which we just wanted people to write in, and we had like loads of kind of crappy games that people sent us. That were just, I don't know, loads of huge PC boxes that, I don't know, French language programs and things that we were never going to review, but we just got sent them. So we used to, we were going to give them away because they were just, clogging up the office. So I just did a picture of this guy with a pink beret on, and I remember it said, I am the man with the long chin, wearing pink beret, that's what his full name was. And if you write to me, I will send you something from my secret pocket, which was going to be
I couldn't get away with that today.
No, we couldn't have got away with a lot of what we did get away with back in those days. So, and that, I think people started writing in about him and asking, who was he? And I remember we used to get letters from somebody claiming she was his girlfriend, and I don't know, it just caught people's imagination. And then from that, I think it was more a case that Tim and I, we knew that we couldn't compete with magazines. You know, then we didn't have screenshots, we didn't have the kind of sort of breadth and depth that magazines could go into. So we had to do something. And also, we were just sort of like really naughty, badly behaved schoolboys. So we just put up stuff that made us laugh. And as I was a graphic designer, I think it was sort of quite easy to do kind of characters and pictures, even though a lot of the pictures were deliberately bad. Yeah.
It kind of started in 1993, so it was all Amiga and Mega Drive, and then later on it got to PS2 and Xbox. So what was the biggest change you saw over that period in gaming?
I guess it was kind of the fall of Sega, really. And Atari, you lost it felt like a really transitional time in games. You know, when I started, you know, the first games launch I ever went to was Sonic 2. And then I think I was still there at the point that Sega said we're not doing hardware anymore and getting out of the games industry. And I remember, you know, watching Atari just spectacularly crash and burn. You know, we went to the launch of the Jaguar, and it was at Atari HQ, and this place was just abandoned. You know, this was supposedly like the nerve centre of like Atari Europe. You know, Atari, a big brand, and there was no one there. It was like The Walking Dead, and they had 2 little rooms set up with some Jaguars for people to play on, and one of the rooms had a couple of bowls of Twiglets and some orange squash. And it was that more than anything else. You just kind of think, yeah, this is not going to end well, is it? They've got no money.
What was the reaction of the people there as well, the other people coming to see the Jaguar?
Yeah, it was much, well, yeah, I mean, I think Tim and I were both there, and I think we just thought this is just a bit sad, because we really liked the Atari PR guy, who just seemed just horribly beleaguered and under pressure the whole time. And he knew that, you know, Twiglets and orange squash wasn't going to cut it with most games journalists, but he didn't have any other money to do anything else. And I think it'd been the previous year, I don't know, forget my timelines, but Atari had clearly spent the last of their money on a big launch at the London Planetarium, hosted by Baldrick from Blackadder. And they showcased in the planetarium the new games they had coming out, and I don't know, what was the Jaguar game that was a tribal game?
Oh, the checkered flag?
No, we drove a little car around big rooms.
I'm sure someone here will know.
Like a sort of 3D micro. That was it, yeah. And I remember they showed Club Drive on the screen, and the whole audience just laughed. And it was like, oh. And just seeing this poor guy, the PR guy afterwards, just like, you know, almost in tears. Anyway, so yeah, so I just got on to kind of talking about Atari. Anyway, but yeah, it was that, I think, it's really stuck in my mind, because Atari to me as a kid, you know, it was Atari. It was
a big job, wasn't it?
Yeah, it gave birth to gaming. Do I turn this way now?
Well, I was going to say, there was one machine that, you know, I was quite a fan of, I must admit, growing up, and I know Digitiser did kind of lay into Amiga fanboys ever so slightly. What's the reason behind that?
Well, funny enough, my other half, who sat in the front row, said to me the other day, what do I talk to people about this thing, you know, this event, because I know nothing about games. I only know that you hate the Amiga. And I had to point out that I don't hate the Amiga. I hated the Amiga owners who wrote in saying, in droves, saying, why aren't you covering the Amiga? And writing to my boss trying to get me fired. And complaining to Ofcom because we were not covering the Amiga. All this happened, right? So after a while, yeah, kind of did sort of start to resent the Amiga because of its owners.
I remember seeing an online petition to get you sacked with loads of signatures on it. It was on Amiga, yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, and sorry, we were proved right that the Amiga was, as we correctly asserted fairly early on, a dying format.
I love the fact that the main guy who seemed to be behind that as well was Stuart Campbell, who worked with you, did the column, and he was the ex-editor of Amiga Power magazine about 6 months before, wasn't he?
Right, with the main man behind what? The hate campaign?
I remember his name was always singled out for some reason as writing inflammatory comments.
I don't remember that.
Well, how did Stuart get to work with you? You said Violet Berlin did a column as well?
Yeah, well, it was Violet that kind of put us in touch with Stuart. She knew him. And Violet, we had this slightly weird encounter with her. How we got to meet her was at our first European computer trade show at the Business Design Centre in Islington, which always had one corner that smelled sick for some reason, every single year. And then they moved to Olympia one year, and that also had a corner that smelled sick. And it was the same corner, but in a completely different building. So it was like one of the organisers would like deliberately go and throw up in a corner before anyone got there. Anyway, so we went to see Nintendo at ECTS one year, and I'm not going to say anything about Nintendo's PR man. He was very nice. Actually, it didn't seem like the brightest spark, shall we say. So he'd shown us some games, and then he said, "Oh, and now you're going to meet Violet Berlin." We're like, what? And so Violet sort of came over. We thought it was like they'd hired Violet Berlin to talk to us about games or something. And no, she just started massively fangirling, kind of, and going, "Oh, I really love Digitiser," and so on. So through that, she then got us invited to, I don't know, it was 94 or 95 Lillehammer Olympics, Winter Olympics game that was coming out from US Gold. She got us. She was great, buddy. She just used to, because no one liked us, because she liked Digitiser. She would get us invited on all these sort of promotional trips around the world, which was nice. So, yeah, and then we kind of just became really good friends with her, and then we said, "Come and write a column for us, why don't you do that?" And so she wrote a column for a while, and then she said, "I haven't got time to do this every week, what about Stuart Campbell?" So, there we go, long rambling story involving sick.
It was a daily magazine, so that kind of must have been a lot of work to get it out.
Yeah, didn't feel like it. In all honesty, like when I was doing it at home at the end, because we originally worked in the office, and then when Tim got fired, I asked to start working from home, and I used to do it in an hour in the morning. I mean, not including kind of playing games, and then I used to spend the rest of the time trying to kind of get sitcoms and things commissioned, which did eventually work. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know, it never felt like work. I mean, Tim quite famously once said to his wife, "Right, I better leave for school in the morning," and that's what it was like. We were just, we were just having a laugh. I mean, it was literally the best job, barring the fact that our bosses hated us and wanted to fire us most of the time. That was the one downside.
And did you feel a lot of kind of freedom that you weren't part of the magazines and you didn't have editors and stuff like that? It was, you were more kind of in a different platform and could go wild.
We were, well, yeah, to a degree. I mean, a lot of that freedom just came back from the fact that we weren't really behaving. I remember the night, Teletext had a do in the evening, kind of, I don't know know what it was in aid of, but we would happen to be in the office one evening, which we normally weren't, with 3 sort of nibbles and drinks, and it happened to be the night that Frank Butcher left EastEnders. So we decided, we're going to put up a page on Digitiser while we're here saying goodbye Frank, and a picture of Frank Butcher. So in that respect, and we weren't allowed to do that, because Teletext, you had to run everything by them. You couldn't just kind of put up random pages, because you could, put up Nazi propaganda or something. It all had to be cleared, which we wouldn't have done. We were just putting up pictures of Frank Butcher. But yeah, so the freedom just came from kind of going, to hell with it. And occasionally they'd pick us up on things, but a lot of the time, the bad stuff they missed. It was stuff like I've told this story before, I'm sure. I've told it on your podcast. I had the duty editor ring me up one day and kind of, I changed something on your page that said, finger the index, page 100. And it was like, what? It's like, using your finger to press buttons, and also kind of it's a play on index finger. And he's like, yeah, well, it could be read another way. And then we had another time, it was some random thing that we just put at the end of a review, which had nothing to do with the review, and it was a reference to the 3 R's, which, reading, writing, arithmetic. And that got taken out because the 3 R's sounds like the 3 R's or something. And it was like, so they knew stuff was going on, but they kind of identified the wrong things.
Hitting the wrong target.
Yeah.
Well, they're finding stuff you didn't even know about. You're like, we didn't mean that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, the 3 R's.
Well, around that time, obviously Games Master was on TV, and that was very innuendo-laden. And, Viz magazine, did you have much influence from Viz? That was very British and that kind of tongue-in-cheek humour.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love Viz. Still do. Bought it yesterday. And yeah, I remember reading that at school. It was actually Horsenberger, who I know some of you know was the first. He was a Teletext artist, also worked at Teletext. Follow him on Twitter. He introduced me to Viz. I remember him bringing it into school one day and kind of looking at it and going, wow, it's like a comic with like swearing in it. This is awesome. So yeah, I guess it was an influence to a degree. But we just didn't think about it. We just did what made us laugh. We weren't going to go, let's copy, this, that or the other. It was just amusing ourselves.
Did you know how popular it was and like the kind of viewing figures you were getting?
Sort of. We used to get told kind of what our viewing figures were, which at one point were apparently 1.5 million a week, which is just absurd. I don't know how many of those were sort of avid readers and how many of them were sort of old ladies just kind of going through every page on Teletext trying to find knitting patterns or something. And then that that went down towards the end because Teletext tried to kill us. When they did that, it went down by about half. But every day we got a lot of letters, but it was still somehow sort of remote and distant. It isn't like, I don't know, Bono steps out on stage and, there's loads of people there. It's not I'm saying I'm Bono or anything like that, or Jesus or whatever. It's just an analogy. So yeah, I don't know, it didn't feel real. I don't know, our audience, at least initially, was me and Tim, just trying to make each other laugh.
So it was really the post that was the only kind of indication of the audience?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Someone sort of says, oh, it's 1.5 million a week, it feels a bit, it's abstract, isn't it? It's a number. Yeah.
What did the rest of the gaming industry think of Digitiser, like the magazines and the media?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. I mean, quite literally, I remember the head of IDOS PR who released Tomb Raider. We saw him at one of the game shows once, and he said to us, I've got a new bag. And I was like, well, okay, do you like my bag? And apparently the previous year in our write-up of the ECTS show, we'd criticised his ladylike bag.
You don't remember that then?
Yeah, we hadn't remembered doing that at all, but he was showing off like his new man bag. So I don't know, some of them just hated us, some of the magazines hated us, some of the magazines loved us. Weirdly, a lot of the people that we had run-ins with, I'm quite sort of friendly with now on Twitter, like Steve Merritt from, who used to work at EMAP on meme machines and stuff like that. That magazine had a particular issue with us for some reason. Oh God, look, that was cool. Anyone who missed it at the back, I just rolled my bottle lid across the table backs.
You can watch it back on YouTube.
Yes, it's all excitement here. You didn't know you were going to get stunned, did you? What was I talking about? Steve Merritt. Yeah, so he did some reply in the Meme Machines letters page about us having 1.5 million viewers, and that was like a lie. So we wrote him a letter in which we called him Biscuit Skin, which didn't make it wasn't in relation to it. Maybe he did have psoriasis or something, which would have been unfortunate, but that wasn't what we were aiming for. And Fishback, we called him Fishback, which now again I think, God, what if he had psoriasis? But no. How do they know I've got psoriasis?
These guys are really good investigative journalists.
But I've actually become quite friendly with Steve on, we send messages now to one another. I don't call him Fishback or Biscuit Skin anymore. And then Dave Perry, weirdly, I've kind of become quite friendly with, and he got Tim fired. So,
what is the story there then?
Well, I was off on paternity leave. Tim had been given a tip-off that Dave had got into trouble over falling magazine readership. Tim put up a story on our Fat Sal, Gossip the Dog page, gaming gossip page, about it. Dave rang up and complained to our editors, and Tim got fired the day I returned from maternity leave. Quite spectacularly fired, because he poured a whole cup of coffee all over his computer before they marched him out and changed the door codes.
That's a bit of an extreme reaction over a phone call and one article, though, do you think?
No, because they were angling to... Mainly, to be honest, they didn't want to fire me because I did the graphics. Ironically, after they fired Tim, I ended up doing Digitiser full time and never did any more graphics for them. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know, but I do know where it started. That we got this reputation as troublemakers. And it's not, yeah, it's completely justified. We were just like sort of little kids, but the first thing was relatively early on. For some reason, Teletext had considered Digitiser to be the saviour of Teletext because, on the whole, Teletext hadn't gone down well. You know, there'd been all sorts of problems. Like there was, I don't know children here, but there was an adult section that they ran after 11 o'clock at night, which I believe might have shared the same pages with the kids' pages during the day. So during the day you had like, you know, cartoons and stuff, and then at 11 o'clock at night that switched to kind of sex advice. And then one day in one of the regions, a problem page about anal sex has stayed up on the kids' section. You know, at that stage we hadn't written anything about anal sex, so they considered us to be a safe bet. And then we, or Tim, it's again Tim, but I kind of approved it, wrote some comment about epilepsy, which it's always annoyed me. This, I don't think I've ever said this before. It was a review of Street Fighter 2, I think. And Tim said in the review, yes, now you can develop epilepsy. Now you too can get epilepsy or something like that off the back of Street Fighter 2. It's like, no, Street Fighter 2 isn't the game that gives people epilepsy. That always bugged me. But anyway, so Tim did this, and a man from the British Epilepsy Society rang up and said, this isn't good. You know, you're making fun of epilepsy. We weren't making fun of epilepsy. And Tim had a nice chat with him, and he said, oh, it's fine, I managed to calm him down. Anyway, in The Sun the next day, there was a story about Teletext react over sick video game joke. And then my bosses rang up, and they went through Digitiser with a fine-tooth comb, and that was it. Our reputation was sealed from that point on. I just thought we were trouble.
Well, did they not trust you after that? Did they have to run things by them, or were there any kind of cautious?
I remember there was... definitely told this story, probably on your podcast. I went on after Tim had been sacked, I went on a training day with just a general Teletext kind of training day where, you know, we were taught, you know, cool journalism skills. I split my trousers that day as well, apropos nothing. Like, completely split my trousers. We had to do, we had to go around London in a black cab. They hired each of us a black cab, and we had to kind of like find policemen's hats and take photos of ourselves wearing policemen's hats, and I tore my trousers on the embankment and had to go and buy. I mean, like literally, I'm not just saying I split the pants at the back, like the entire leg just fell apart, and I had to run around London with one sort of flapping leg like this is my belly. What was I talking about? Anyway, in the morning we'd done this thing about it was a hypothetical scenario. What if the entire royal family had been killed in a skiing accident? I mean, aside from like what sort of skiing accident's going to kill them all in one go, unless they were in like a chairlift thing, and like, you know, one of those big that could just collapse and kill them all in one. Well, they probably don't all travel simultaneously in case that happens. Anyway, what would the Queen do? Skiing. She's old. So they were like, so what would your first thing you'll do in the event of the entire royal family dying in a skiing accident? And one guy, the first person I was put his hand and said, check Digitiser in case they made any jokes about it. And everyone else, I mean, that was aside from the fact, like, who the hell do you think I am? First thing they go, oh, anyone else kind of went, oh yes, and then wrote that down. It wasn't like no one went, ha ha ha, that's a funny joke. No, they all went, yeah, that's what we do. And it annoyed me because that wasn't really what we did on Digitiser. It was silly and occasionally a bit puerile. But I don't know. Anyway, so we had this reputation that just built and built. Yeah, there you go.
Well, Digitiser seemed to be really honest with its reviews and never kind of pandered to, you know, the companies or the publishers. Were you ever under pressure by people to say certain things?
We had a few weird encounters. It was never sort of overt that someone was like, oh, I'll give you a backhander. But there were certainly a few times where there was a bit of sort of like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, if you give me a good review. And there was one guy, I can't remember what company it was, which is probably just as well, because I probably shouldn't say it, who sent us an email sort of saying, here's a copy, or it was in a letter in there, it was like, here's a copy of my product. Please contact us for and we'll discuss remuneration. It's like, what? So it's all about ethics in games, journalism, kids. It happens.
Well, a bit later on, you went down to 3 days a week.
Yep.
And also, like, the humour kind of vanished for a bit. What was going on there?
God, it was awful. Like, genuinely one of the darkest periods of my life. I got called in one day, and it was shortly after 9/11 had happened, and of course they were looking at Digitiser in case I made some jokes about it. And then I got called in, and Teletext, because of course the bulk of its advertising was cheap holidays, so they were looking for ways to save money because it had lost a ton of money through its advertising evaporating, and they decided that Digitiser had been troublesome long enough, and also we can kill two birds with one stone by cutting it in half and reducing it to 3 days a week. And oh, by the way, remove all the humour. As I was told, I went in there and I had this meeting with these two guys, and it was like classic good cop, bad cop. There was the features editor, who was a really sweet guy, and he sort of just had this look of pain on his face throughout this entire meeting, like he couldn't believe it was happening. And then there was this awful little man who was the deputy features editor, who was new and clearly like he had something to prove. So he just proceeded to just eviscerate kind of the 8 years of work I'd done on it. He got printouts where he was like pointing out kind of weird bits of jokes and kind of going, this humour, it excludes people. And it was, and then so I came out of that meeting kind of feeling that Digitiser was just the worst thing ever, and with the news that my salary had been cut in half. And yeah, I could have fought it, but it's like I had a mortgage to pay, I had kids. There was no, I couldn't really afford to take a sort of, a last stand and go, no, if you're going to do that, I'm out of here. But it was just as well, because it worked out all right in the end.
Well, what happened then? How did it because it did come back, didn't it, eventually?
Yeah, it never went back. I don't think it ever went back to daily. I may be wrong about that. Some of you might know better than I do. But actually, maybe it did go back to daily.
Towards the end it did, didn't it? 5 years ago.
But they didn't increase my salary. They kept it at half of what it was and never kind of gave it back to what it was. But yeah, I got called in because basically over the course of the year that Digitiser had been without its humour, people didn't stop writing in, saying, we miss Digi as it used to be. They had to admit they made a mistake. I mean, that wasn't what happened in the meeting when they told me this. What happened in the meeting was they said, we'd like Digitiser to go back to 5 days a week. We really appreciate what you do. And then as I was going out of that meeting, which the horrible little man who'd been nasty to me before, he hadn't said anything at all in this meeting because it was, he was probably choking on some humble pie. As we were going out of the meeting, it was brilliant. It was like this, from one of the worst moments of my life to one of the best. As we were going out of the meeting, he went, we'd like to bring the humour back. And I was like, sorry? Yeah, we'd like you to bring the humour back, please. So, and that was, I said, thank you very much, and I shook his hand and went out. So, yeah, it sort of had quite a nice, happy ending.
So after that, when did you kind of realise it was all over?
Well, God, this is a roller coaster, this is. So what happened about a year after that is my colleague, who was based in Teletext, was a guy called Gavin Lambert, who was our kind of chips and teats monkey, who he would do the chips and teats, tips and cheats, in case you're wondering whether I've had a stroke. He was based in the office and I was based at home, and he rang me up one day and he said, look, I think they're going to axe Digitiser. And I just thought, oh, for God's sakes, I just can't be bothered with this anymore. It's been, I've got the emotional bends. It's sort of so up and down. And I came off the phone with him, and I thought, no, I felt something had broken inside me. So the horrible little man rang me up, and he said, we'd like you to come in for a meeting about Digitiser. And I was like, okay, right, and I hung up. And I immediately picked the phone back up and said to him, called him and said, actually I quit. And he went, because we were wanting to talk to you about expanding Digitiser. But it still felt like the right decision. Even when he said that, I mean, I could have killed my mate Gavin, but you know, I've done it for 10 years. It was long enough. Says he who brought it back a few years ago, and he's continuing to do it and more.
Well, when you did stop doing it briefly, I mean, it must have felt a bit of a void after you've been doing that pretty much daily for 10 years. Did you miss it?
Yeah, I think with hindsight, more than I realised at the time. At the time, it's like, oh, I'm free, I can do anything. And, you know, thankfully, the job I do now, which is writing for TV, you know, it was starting to take off, and I was able to make a living out of it. But, yeah, I think I went a bit mad after it left, because I mean, it was, you know, it'd been part of my life for 10 years, and it was, you know, even though it had been horribly sort of terrifying and insecure at points, it was still a sort of constant in my life. So yeah, it was, I missed it, yeah, and I continued to miss it really up until recently.
Well, you did go out in style, for anyone who saw the last issue of Digitiser. For those that didn't, explain Turn of the Worm.
Turn of the Worm was a children's cartoon strip that I did on Teletext. It was my thing that I did other than Digitiser, and on the final day on Digi, I decided to reveal to Digitiser's readers what Turn of the Worm would look like when he was being sick, after drinking milk. I don't know how it got on air, and I do feel I'm sort of just, I'm cool. Look what I did. Look what I put on Teletext. Everyone, I'm actually a little bit ashamed of it, if I'm honest. And it sort of seems to, particularly as like when people talk about Digitiser, it seems to be the image that people share alongside it. Oh, gosh, should have had it there. Exactly what I need above my head.
So the way you did kind of, people remembered it then though. You did go out in style.
Yeah, I suppose. And it was, but that was, you know, that last image on the page, which I don't know how it got cleared. It wasn't really representative, I don't think, of what Digi had been. You know, we were near the knuckle at points. You know, we had a character called the Tin Man who was always going on about swinging his chopper in the woods and having to oil his nuts. But, you know, it's like Dick Emery sort of level of innuendo rather than just a ejaculating penis, which isn't very subtle, is it?
So why did you start Digitiser 2000?
Well, do I tell the real story? I'd stumbled across, I don't know how, I'd seen someone retweet something on Twitter. I didn't do anything on Twitter. I had a Twitter account that I was sort of cyber squatting on. It's a bit iffy. And I'd seen a retweet from I can't remember, it was some Daily Mail journalist or something. Anyway, I'd see it's about this journalist going bankrupt. And there'd been a comment on there from someone called Brad Burton. I don't know if any of you remember that name, but he was a gay, and I thought, oh, I recognise that name. Can it be the Brad Burton who used to be a games journalist back in the 90s? And Brad Burton used to write a column for whichever games magazine it was that he worked on, which was basically Brad's clubbing adventures. And it was like in a games magazine, he just used to talk about going out to clubs and taking drugs and meeting girls and things. And it always just felt, it used to wind me up because it felt like the most self-indulgent nonsense. I'm watching my words here so that I don't slander anyone. This is all my personal opinion, nothing to do with anything else. And we based a character on Digitiser on him called Cyber X, who used to just talk about his cool clubbing and the drugs he took and stuff like that. Anyway, so that was why the name had stuck out to me. So I looked into what Brad Burton was up to now and found that he's a motivational speaker these days and has written a series of books called Get Off Your Arse. And they're just astonishing. I recommend everyone reads them. And they're exactly like the kind of motivational book that you'd expect from someone who thought a video games magazine was an appropriate forum for photo stories about his clubbing exploits. They're just anyway, go look him up. Brad Burton, get off your arse. Anyway, so, and I shared this with my other half, and this book, as I was reading it, I think quoting things out, saying this is just one of the most astonishing things I've ever read. And so I thought, well, I could bring back Cyber X as a kind of motivational speaker. So I just wrote something for my own entertainment. She read it and she said, this is really good. It's you know, and funny. It's a shame that you don't share it. And I thought, oh, it's been not enough. Sod it. Let's put it online. So that's what I did. And then suddenly it was like, oh my God, people remember me. And
were you amazed by the response?
Yeah, I mean, it was slow and steady. I mean, but there was a sort of initial kind of, oh God, Mr Biffo's back, and oh, something's going to go horribly wrong, and he's going to go mad again.
Was writing for the internet much different to writing for teletext?
Yes, because I write too much. I blather on, and it's, you know, teletext had 60 words a page or thereabouts, and so it's sort of much more concise. And it was an interesting exercise because it's the 25th anniversary of Digi this year. So at the start of the year, to coincide with that, I did a week's worth of classic Digitiser on old style pages. And yeah, I realised in some respects my writing is probably better when it's more concise. But I just think, sorry, it's my website, I'll write as much as I want. Don't like it, stuff it.
Well, could you tell us about your found footage as well?
Yes, last year, thanks to the generosity of lots of people who helped with the Kickstarter, it was a joint effort, did a web series called Mr Biffo's Found Footage, which if you haven't seen it, please go on YouTube and watch it. It's very, very weird, I'll warn you now, but there is a kind of underlying sci-fi story to it. It's ostensibly a collection of footage found on some VHS tapes by myself, and it turns out there's more to it than just being a collection of random stuff.
I've heard a lot of chatter about it, so I need to check it out.
Yes, you do need to check it out. Unbelievable. Asking me about it. It's, I don't know, a lot of the people sort of sat on these front rows are either in it in some capacity or contributed to it. We ended with a big glossy sci-fi film, 20-minute sci-fi film called The Trojan Arse Protocol, which practically bankrupted me. But it's the thing that I've probably done other than Digi that I'm most, and my children, yes, all right, that I'm most proud of in my life. I think it's astonishing, even if I do say so myself, because it looks really good. And it's basically aliens, but with creatures with bums for faces. Come on, that's a pitch, isn't it? And there's my friend Mark, who stood at the back there, who plays lead bum, #1.
Oh, Paul, you know, I think it's testament to the groundbreaking work that you did that we're all here 25 years later, still talking and remembering fondly those, you know, daily issues of Digitiser that we all grew up reading, and you shared, like, you know, the news from the gaming world with us, and really just, you know, we want to say thank you for joining us today. Let's give Paul a warm welcome. Thank you very much. I'm sure there are some Digitiser fans who'd like to ask Mr Biffo a question or two. Just put your hand up if you'd like to ask anything.
Not all at once. Oh no, they're leaving.
We've got one in the background.
Go on, ask them a question. Mate, force them to ask a question before they walk out.
Where's the toilet?
They smell of pee. Where?
Hello? Hi. I just wanted to ask if you ever got involved in any Game Central stuff, or did you ever read Game Central that came after Digitiser?
No, I never even read Game Central. I've looked at it which it's now in the Metro, I believe, which I've looked at right there a couple of times, and I've had a bit of contact with the guys who do it, and they seem like nice guys. But I don't know, it was like, you don't really want to, it's like a sort of divorce a bit, isn't it? And sort of someone else has moved into your house, and you don't really want to go and spy on them. So no, I never read it after I left.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Put your hand up.
Hi there. I understand there's an effort to preserve the Digitiser pages through recovery of Teletext. I know it's quite sort of technical, but I wonder if you could share anything on how that's going, and if there's any plans to archive Digitiser and perhaps put it online, and perhaps you can tell the audience about how they can help preserve Digitiser pages as well.
Excellent question. Yeah, there's a guy on Twitter called Grim Fandango, is his Twitter handle. And he manages to recover teletext pages from old VHS tapes. So if you've got any old VHS tapes from the 90s, they don't have to have teletext on them. Somehow he manages to take the teletext signal off of VHS tapes and piece together teletext pages from it. So
if it's recording a channel 4 then, or can it be anything?
Well, it doesn't matter what channel, because you could get CFAX off there. But he's slowly sort of piecing it all together. He's like kind of Indiana Jones, but for teletext. So get in touch with him. Grim Fandango. Jason Robertson is his name. I mean, I don't know how he does it. It's like alchemy.
Got a question at the front here as well? One at the back.
If Digitiser had been expanded and you'd continued working for them, what would you have done with the expansion?
I have no idea. I suppose it depends on what they wanted. I think they, if I remember, they wanted to slightly kind of capitalise on like Loaded and magazines like that, and make a kind of lads section, which I think Digi would have been part of. I don't really know. What would I have done? I mean, it's limited, isn't it, what you can do with Teletext? Just more stupid nonsense, probably, at that stage.
Where was the appointment?
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, yeah. Do you know where you're going to get found out?
Well, that's a loaded question. This comes from a man who, at the premiere of Mr Biffo's found footage, walked in on me in a toilet cubicle.
It was more energetic bursting in than walking.
Bit enthusiastic
about it.
I was just having 5 minutes to check my phone and not... Found out. What do you mean?
I mean, do you get like imposter syndrome? Do you think all the time like people are going to find out that this is actually just a load of rubbish, I don't know what I'm doing?
No, I don't, because I make stuff that makes me laugh. And so I don't really care if other people think it's rubbish.
That's probably why it's so good.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, let's say my other half Sonia over there, she will tell you that I laugh at nothing as much as I do myself.
Any more questions? A few more.
Lots.
Exercise today, Ravi?
I stumbled across Biffo Vision at 3 in the morning when I couldn't see it on BBC 3, and it wasn't even on the TV guide or anything. So what's the story there? How did that come about?
We went in, myself, well, I was asked to go in and pitch something to BBC 3, even though I was too old at the time to make programmes with BBC 3. And I wanted to write some more with Tim Moore, who I'd done Digi with, so I dragged him in with me, and we pitched a show that we said we want half the audience to love it and the other half to absolutely hate it. And they went, yes, that's the sort of thing that we should be making here at BBC 3. And then when they saw it, they went, no, that's really not what we should be doing at BBC 3. So in a way, it was kind of like a predecessor to found footage. When found footage is a lot madder than we were allowed to do with Biffo Vision. But I tried to capture some of what I would have wanted to go on and do with Biffo Vision. Still love it. I mean, it's my favourite thing I've ever done for TV. It's bonkers, but yeah, found footage is by some leagues madder.
What made you choose Mr. T as a character, and did he ever contact you?
Sadly, he never has. That would be awesome. To actually get Mr. T saying stay away from my bins. But it came about from I used to, I don't know, I kind of, back when I became a teenage father and lived in various council accommodations, the first place I ever lived we literally had some huge bins outside. It was a really weird layout of this place that we lived, and we were sort of attached to a children's home, strangely. And right out the front door was the bins for the children's home, these like big bins. And living above us was it was a group of kids that had just come out of care. This place was the flat above us was sort of a halfway house between them. This has all got very serious sounding, hasn't it, for a question like where did your stupid character come from? Anyway, I had a horrible kind of relationship with these kids upstairs who kind of stole my milk. And I ended up threatening one of them with a brick at 2 AM once. I'm not even joking. It was like sick of the bloody noise from them upstairs. And I just flipped one night and grabbed a brick. Anyway, it sort of came from that, and then the next place I lived, I had a terrible relationship with the kid that lived next door who once knocked over my bins. And that's where it came from. I don't know why.
Mr. T to sort it out.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Hi.
Hello.
Right, just keeping on the subject of bins.
Good stuff.
I remember you used to write for Edge. You were really the only reason I was subscribed to Edge
bless
for a good few years, for Biffo Vision in the back. Now, one of the things that I remember reading on your blog was the Phil Harrison article.
Ah, yes.
Did Edge really bin you over that? What happened?
No. I quit Edge years later. The Phil Harrison story, yes, it's very embarrassing, but I'm a Marillion fan. There's another one still at the back, and he's got a Marillion t-shirt on, so I'm not alone here. And every couple of years, Marillion have a big convention in Holland. And one year, and Phil Harrison, who used to be the boss of Sony PlayStation, is a big Marillion fan and friends with Marillion. And he happened to be there one year while I was there, and he tried to auction off a PlayStation 3, I think it was, for charity. And it was just the most awful thing, because he completely sort of didn't get the spirit of the event. He kind of took over the stage, came on stage, you saw the whole band kind of going, oh God, what's he doing? He said, come on, I'll get the band to sign it. He was waving his arms around in the air. So I thought, well, I've got an Edge column. I can write about this. And then they said, no, you can't write about that. That's too embarrassing to Phil Harrison. And I said to them, can I put it on my blog? And I did, so I asked permission. And then it just became this massive global news story about Phil Harrison embarrassing himself at a rock concert. So no, I didn't get fired by Edge at all. It was I quit when I quit being Mr Biffo altogether, because people were nasty to me on the internet.
We have time for one or two more.
Hi. Where am I looking? Oh, you're there. Oh, hello.
I just wondered, was Mr Biffo ever friends with Bambaboozle? What happened to him, man?
Say again, sorry?
Was Mr Biffo ever friends with Bambaboozle? Whatever happened to him? And I also wondered if you ever went on a Teletext holiday together.
I did design Bambaboozler. That was part of my job. He was slightly inspired by... I was asked to make him look like Bob Monkhouse. But he ended up looking like the dad out of Happy Days. And that big nose. But no, I didn't go on holiday with him. Though I was very good friends with the guy that did write Bamboozle. I went to his wedding.
Let's have one final question, I think, at the front here.
So with Grim Fandango recovering all the stuff, and you getting away with lots of stuff before, is there anything that you're kind of worried about right now?
Not really. I mean, no, there wasn't much other than the worst thing, which was Turn of the Worm being sick. Was the one thing that I think everyone remembers. But the rest of it, I think we were on the whole. I mean, there was a lot of Tim and I, back when we used to do it, there were lots of allusions to us doing deviant sexual activity. Depending on who was writing the page that day, it would be about the other one. But other than that, nah, I mean, I'm relatively confident that we were fairly politically correct.
Half an hour from now, you're going to be thinking.
Yeah, no, there was one. Actually, thinking about it, we did do. On the last week, we had the character of Brian Adams, who spoke with a kind of slightly stereotypical kind of Chinese accent. So his songs would be like "None to You" and stuff like that, which I'm not terribly proud of, but it's. Anyway, there we go. What a note to end on. Mr Biffo is a racist.
But it has been wonderful getting these stories, Mr Biffo. Long may Digitiser 2000 continue. Do check it out online if you haven't already. Let's have a round of applause for Mr Biffo.
One last thing, because I forgot to mention it, or I didn't get asked about it. I'm doing probably a new Kickstarter starting the end of this month for a Digitiser web series. Yeah, that. So go check out Digitiser 2000. Follow me on Twitter at Mr Biffo for all the details on that. Yeah, we might have Violet Berlin involved in it in some capacity, who you may remember.
Fantastic.